We continue to make progress toward a strong global climate agreement this year in Paris. All the G7 countries have now put forward our post-2020 targets for reducing carbon emissions. And will continue to urge other significant emitters to do so as well. We'll continue to meet our climate finance commitments too. Help developing countries transition to low-carbon growth. As we've done in the U.S., the G7 agreed on the need to integrate climate risks into development assistance. And investment programs across the board, and to increase access to risk insurance. To help developing countries respond to and recover from climate-related disasters. And building on the Power Africa initiative I launched 2 years ago. The G7 will work to mobilize more financing for clean energy projects in Africa. With respect to security, the G7 remains strongly united in support for Ukraine. We'll continue to provide economic support and technical assistance that Ukraine needs as it moves ahead on critical reforms to transform its economy and strengthen its democracy. As we've seen again in recent days, Russian forces continue to operate in eastern Ukraine. Violating Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is now the second year in a row that the G7 has met without Russia. Another example of Russia's isolation. And every member of the G7 continues to maintain sanctions on Russia for its aggression against Ukraine. Now, it's important to recognize the Russian economy has been seriously weakened. The ruble and foreign investment are down, inflation is up. The Russian central bank has lost more than $150 billion in reserves. Russian banks and firms are virtually locked out of the international markets. Russian energy companies are struggling to import the services. And technologies they need for complex energy projects. Russian defense firms have been cut off from key technologies. Russia is in deep. Recession. So Russia's actions in Ukraine are hurting Russia and hurting the Russian people. Here at the G7, we agreed that even as we will continue to seek a diplomatic solution, sanctions against Russia will remain in place so long as Russia continues to violate its obligations under the Minsk agreements. Our European partners reaffirmed that they will maintain sanctions on Russia until the Minsk agreements are fully implemented. Which means extending the EU's existing sectoral sanctions beyond July. And the G7 is making it clear that, if necessary, we stand ready to impose additional, significant sanctions against Russia. Beyond Europe, we discussed the negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. And we remain united heading into the final stages of the talks. Iran has a historic opportunity to resolve the international community's concerns about its nuclear program. And we agreed that Iran needs to seize that opportunity. Our discussions with Prime Minister Abadi of Iraq, President Kaida Sebsi of Tunisia and President Buhari of Nigeria were a chance to address the threats of ISIL and Boko Haram. The G7 countries, therefore, agreed to work together and with our partners to further coordinate our counter-terrorism efforts. As many of the world's leading partners in global development joined by leaders of Ethiopia, Liberia, Nigeria, Senegal and the African Union, we discussed how to maximize the impact of our development partnerships. We agreed to continue our landmark initiative to promote food security and nutrition, part of our effort to lift 500 million people in developing countries out of hunger and malnutrition by (2030). We'll continue to work with our partners in West Africa to get Ebola cases down to zero. And as part of our global health security agenda, I'm pleased that the G7 made a major commitment to help 60 countries over the next 5 years achieve specific targets to better prevent detect and respond to future outbreaks before they become epidemics. And finally, I want to commend Chancellor Merkel for ensuring that this summit included a focus on expanding educational and economic opportunities for women and girls. The G7 committed to expanding career training for women in our own countries. And to increase technical and vocational training in developing countries, which will help all of our nations prosper. So, again, I want to thank Angela and the people of Germany for their extraordinary hospitality. I leave here confident that when it comes to the key challenges of our time, America and our closest allies stand shoulder to shoulder. So with that, I will take some questions. And I will start off with Jeff Mason of Reuters. Question, thank you, Mr. President. After your meetings here, you mentioned Greece in your opening statement. Do you believe that the Europeans are being too tough on Greece in these talks? And what else needs to be done on both sides to ensure there's a deal and to ensure that there isn't the undue harm to financial markets that you've warned about? And on a separate and somewhat related topic, the French told reporters today that you said to G7 leaders that you're concerned that the dollar is too strong. What did you say exactly? And are you concerned that the dollar is too strong? President Obama, first of all, don't believe unnamed quotes. I did not say that. And I make a practice of not commenting. On the daily fluctuations of the dollar or any other currency. With respect to Greece, I think that not only our G7 partners but the IMF and other institutions that were represented here feel a sense of urgency in finding a path to resolve the situation there. And what it's going to require is Greece being serious about making some important reforms not only to satisfy creditors, but, more importantly, to create a platform whereby the Greek economy can start growing again and prosper. And so the Greeks are going to have to follow through and make some tough political choices that will be good for the long term. I also think it's going to be important for the international community and the international financial agencies to recognize the extraordinary challenges that Greeks face. And if both sides are showing a sufficient flexibility, then I think we can get this problem resolved. But it will require some tough decisions for all involved. And we will continue to consult with all the parties involved to try to encourage that kind of outcome. Question: Are you confident it will happen before the deadline? President Obama: I think that everybody wants to make it happen and they're working hard to get it done. Nedra. Question: Thank you, Mr. President. How frustrated are you that after you personally raised your concerns about cybersecurity with the Chinese president that a massive attack on US personnel files seems to have originated from China? Was the Chinese government involved? And separately, as a sports fan, can you give us your reaction to the FIFA bribery scandal? Thank you. President Obama: With respect to FIFA, I cannot comment on a pending case by our Attorney General. I will say that in conversations I've had here in Europe, people think it is very important for FIFA to be able to operate with integrity and transparency and accountability. And so as the investigation and charges proceed, I think we have to keep in mind that although football soccer, depending on which side of the Atlantic you live on, is a game, it's also a massive business. It is a source of incredible national pride, and people want to make sure that it operates with integrity. The United States, by the way, since we keep on getting better and better at each World Cup. We want to make sure that a sport that's gaining popularity is conducted in an upright manner. I don't want to discuss because we haven't publicly unveiled who we think may have engaged in these cyber attacks, but I can tell you that we have known for a long time that there are significant vulnerabilities and that these vulnerabilities are going to accelerate as time goes by. Both in systems within government and within the private sector. This is why it's so important that Congress moves forward on passing cyber legislation, cybersecurity. Legislation that we've been pushing for. Why, over the last several years, I've been standing up new mechanisms. Inside of government for us to investigate what happens and to start finding more effective solutions. Part of the problem is that we've got very old systems. And we discovered this new breach in OPM precisely because we've initiated this process of inventorying and upgrading these old systems to address existing vulnerabilities. And what we are doing is going agency by agency, and figuring out what can we fix with better. Practices and better computer hygiene by personnel, and where do we need new systems and new infrastructure? In order to protect information not just of government employees or government activities. But also, most importantly, where there's an interface between government and the American people. And this is going to be a big project and we're going to have to keep on doing it. Because both state and non-state actors are sending everything they've got at trying to breach these systems. In some cases. It's non-state actors who are engaging in criminal activity and potential theft. In the case of state actors, they're probing for intelligence or, in some cases, trying to bring down systems in pursuit of their various foreign policy objectives. In either case, we're going to have to be much more aggressive, much more attentive than we have been.